near the coast of Alaska last week. The U.S. mobilizing 4 destroyers and patrol planes in response to guide the ships away from U.S. waters. Wall Street Journal editorial board writing, quote, "The Naval Patrol is best understood as a warning that U.S. territory isn't safe, as well as a test of how the U.S. will respond. The world is getting more dangerous, and a complacent U.S. political class isn't educating the public about the growing threats."
You know, we're on the edge of war, and the Biden administration refuses to fill the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which it drained last year. So I don't know how this gets more dangerous. The Chinese can see it, and I think they're going to try and take advantage of the situation.
The number of Chinese illegal migrants crossing the border is surging. Guys, up 115% since October last year. This is coming as a new report reveals Chinese nationals have breached U.S. military sites at least 100 times in recent years.
The issue with people probing the defenses of military bases, and this could simply just be driving up to the gate to see if they get turned around, but there have been instances of people posing, or maybe they actually are Chinese tourists, who are just given a side mission and have people who are kept back home or are going to be interviewed as soon as they get back home by the Ministry of State Security, who are very aggressive, who are blowing past checkpoints, who have penetrated deeper into military bases. And if you just step back and look at all of the things China does, and also its method of espionage, which instead of the Soviet Union, and later Russia, which is to focus on a very few high-value penetration agents that can work their way into the CIA or FBI, China just sort of throws everything against the wall and sees what sticks. So this could very well be part of that effort.
U.S. lawmakers now are really taking notice of this new Huawei Mate phone, which it almost like a made in China phone in some ways, and saying that maybe SMIC did violate sanctions there. What does this tell us of where we are in this tech war now?
Yeah, that's a very sensitive issue. The Biden administration, of course, has imposed these very strict export controls on what kinds of chips, what kinds of chip-making equipment can be sent to China. And what we found out through this teardown that we did exclusively is inside the Huawei phone, there's a chip made by SMIC at 7 nanometers, which is much more advanced than anybody thought SMIC could actually produce chips, especially after they've been blacklisted by the company. It sounds a little bit strange that a company, SMIC, that's already been blacklisted by the company, by the U.S. government, still needs to follow U.S. rules, but it does. If SMIC wants to supply Huawei and it has American equipment in its factory, then it needs to follow American export rules in selling to Huawei. So as you referenced, an American lawmaker is now calling for an investigation into what SMIC is doing exactly and how much it's helping Huawei if it is making these chips for Huawei. It's a very sensitive issue.
It is incredibly rare for Kim Jong-un to leave the country, but now we're hearing he's going to take a trip to Russia to talk about a possible arms deal. Put this development into perspective for us.
Well, this has been in the works for a while. The Russian Defense Minister Shoigu visited Pyongyang, about a month ago to set this deal up. And look, this is significant in a couple of ways. One, I'm not as worried about the equipment. North Korea has been stockpiling and using Russian-made equipment for 70 years in its military dictatorship, but I'm very worried about the amount of ammunition that they can provide, particularly artillery. And they can provide thousands and thousands and thousands of rounds that will allow Russia to stretch the war out in Ukraine. And if it settles down into a stalemate, if the Ukrainian counteroffensive breaks down and is not effective, this will allow Putin to absolutely continue the war. And then the other thing, Carly, is this is an extension of the unholy alliance of Iran, China, Russia, and North Korea, the new axis of evil. And I'm not seeing anything in terms of a strategy from the Biden administration to drive wedges in between the axis of evil here, to disrupt what's going on, this new alliance. You basically just see kind of a shoulder shrug from the White House.
Well, President Biden visiting Vietnam yesterday after attending the G20 summit in India. The president saying the U.S. outreach to Vietnam is about providing global stability, not about containing China. Watch this.
What this trip is about is less about containing China. I don't want to contain China. I just want to make sure we have a relationship with China that is on the up and up, squared away, and closer to the United States. Vietnam being closer with the United States. It's not about containing China. It's about having a stable base in the Indo-Pacific.
Well, everybody, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. My name is Alex from Reporterfy Media, and welcome to the show, Let's Talk China Show. I am joined by my awesome co-host, Cyrus Janssen, on the program. Hello, Cyrus. How are you?
Hello, Alex, and everybody. Thank you for joining us here on YouTube. It's fantastic to be here, Alex. We got a lot to talk about today.
Power Hour. It is indeed the Power Hour here. Of course, grab yourself a coffee, put the tea on, stick around. We got lots to cover here. Cyrus, this has been an interesting week here with the G20. You've been following it quite closely there in the United States. What are you hearing over on those parts of the water?
Well, you know what's interesting, Alex, is that I think the big news is that we've got the United States and the G20 are now coming up with a plan to essentially try to take on China's Belt and Road Initiative. And I think this is something that you'll know very clearly because, you know, I know that you've done a lot of work on the Belt and Road, as I have as well. We have a lot of videos that we've done. And what's interesting that we're seeing is I think a lot of people fail to realize this, is that the Belt and Road Initiative is already 10 years old. So, you know, no matter what the United States and Western allies want to do, you know, China has a head start, a massive head start. They've already signed up 149 countries around the world. The Belt and Road, again, it's already 10 years old. It's already done over $6 trillion worth of trade around the globe. And you're seeing so many tangible benefits from countries around the world that have been completely transformed through the Belt and Road Initiative. I mean, this is going through the Middle East, also going through Africa. I mean, these are probably it's really giving a voice to the global South, which, as we know, has been heavily neglected by the United States and our Western allies. And this is something that is causing a huge shift in what we're seeing on the greater scale, is this shift from a unipolar world where after World War II, the United States has always been the world leader. Everyone has looked to the United States. Everything has gone the United States way. You know, obviously it was very strategic after World War II. The United States came in. We had the Accords where we worked with European leaders saying, look, we're going to rebuild Europe after the war. We're going to, make the United States dollar the world currency, the federal, the foreign reserve currency. We're going to, we did that deal with Saudi Arabia to start exporting oil in US dollars. Everything has gone through the United States for decades. It has truly been a unipolar world for a long, long time, but we have seen a massive shift in the last couple of years. And I think for smaller countries around the world, they have a very different approach now. And it is simply one of course, I want to trade with the United States, it being the largest economy in the world. Who doesn't want to trade with the US? But we also want to have other options. And we certainly want to trade with China as well. And I think that we're just seeing this new multipolar world. And that's really that's what's happened with the Belt and Road Initiative. And that is what we're seeing, is that China obviously has a seat at the table. You cannot argue that China can build infrastructure better than any country in the world. I mean, if you're wanting to get bridges built and schools and hospitals and ports and all of these things that are happening, I mean, China's leading the world in this type of innovation. And they are simply doing that all over the world. And we've seen a lot of tangible results. And I think that's the big difference, is that when the United States goes to a continent like Africa, we typically go there to lecture. We sit down and we tell African people, this is what you need to do. And basically, we waste a lot of our time because our entire focus is on telling African leaders to not work with China. Meanwhile, China, obviously, they come in with a very different mindset. Chinese government officials and the Chinese government, they don't care if African countries are working with the United States. Their mindset is a little bit more healthier, in my opinion, where it says, hey, work with the US, but also work with us. Here's what we're going to do. Again, you're seeing those tangible benefits. So kind of going back and wrapping this opening comment up, Alex, it's interesting when we hear these plans. For example, don't you remember about 18 months ago, wasn't Biden all about the Build Back Better program? This was, again, something that made this huge news flash. Everybody's all about BBB, triple B. We're going to build back better. It's going to take on the Belt and Road Initiative. Incredibly, we haven't heard anything in the last 18 months about this. but now the U.S. and the G20 are coming together again. We've got this grand plan, but actions speak louder than words. I would like to see some action, first before I become, a believer in this. We're very good at talking, but can we walk the talk?
Well, thank you for sharing that insight. Cyrus, just to update you, the Build Back Better is actually, well, I nickname it the Build Back Bankrupt. It's actually long gone, and it's pretty much been canceled. It didn't get the go-ahead. It didn't get the support it needed. So bye-bye to that. Now, this does cause the Americans a few issues here, and the number one issue is trade. We look at trade, and we think it's just logistical lines, like a trade line, tanker ships leaving the West Coast, going across the ocean, and just dropping containers or picking up product, vice versa. The real complexity, what's going on with the trade routes today is you're looking at old infrastructure with the United States. Now, people might say, well, what are you talking about? We have the latest, greatest cars on the streets and the roads. We can, do that no problem. And we have, good tanker trucks that drive up and down our roads, but not really. It comes down to technology. It comes down to the things that you mentioned at the start of this program. Companies like Huawei that invested in that infrastructure. Yes, 5G does play an impact with many things here. 5G also operates certain ports to make them more competitive, even here in China. Automation means consistency. Consistency means, getting that product there on time. Gone are the days of pretty much saying, it's in transit. That term in transit that used to be used a lot in North America. Where's my package? It's in transit. Well, that's just not going to happen here in China. They'll be able to pinpoint it. Also, the investment in satellite infrastructure. That satellite infrastructure is more detailed than Google satellites that are out there giving information, GPS information. The new, I believe it's called Baidu or something, satellites that are in the skies here in China, they are more detailed and more precision. Now, the BRI has expanded actually to 152 countries. Maybe it's grown in 3 in the last hour here, but
you're probably right.
It has grown. Now, the interesting part about that is, and I'm going to reinforce your comments earlier by saying that these infrastructure, these are gaining relationships throughout countries and continents. Now, let's look at Africa for a moment. The United States, Britain, UK, and France had many decades to invest in these infrastructures. Now, what they have failed to do is really, do exactly that. You're starting to see railway lines now being put into these countries. Well, we're in 2023. There's 60 to 70,000 kilometers of high-speed rail in China, a country that, in the last 30 years has seen a miracle happen. Now they're moving that whole strategy across the globe and connecting these trade routes. Well, these old trade routes used to be back in biblical times where people used to trade, whether it was the Silk Road trading or whatever, back in the early days. Well, what China is doing is not only putting that infrastructure in, the rail lines, the shipping lines, the airlines, the train lines. There's a train that leaves the city of Chongqing and goes all the way to Germany. So to add to this, who benefits the most out of this? And here's the interesting point. We may think it's just logistical companies, but in fact, A, it's the end user, somebody buying that product. B, it's the distributor, maybe somebody that's importing that product. And also something else to keep in mind is this helps these countries be competitive. So if you're in, an African country many years ago and you had problems getting door-to-door service or rail service, well, that infrastructure is in place now. These small communities that had no connection to the world are actually managing to do that. Your thoughts, where this could go, Cyrus?
Yeah, Alex, you bring up a good point, and I think it just goes back to my original point here is that we see a lot of talk from the United States. And, I even had my father, he sent me a newspaper article that was from the Orlando Sentinel back in our hometown. And it was this grand thing, like saying, look, Biden is meeting with the other G20 leaders. They're finally going to bring this amazing development to the Middle East. They're going to really help out all of these Muslims in the Middle East. And what's interesting is I did a full breakdown of China's Belt and Road Initiative in the Middle East. And what's interesting about that is you look at the infrastructure, things that they have built in the Middle East. Even, for example, when you look at the Muslims that make their annual trip to do the Hajj, the sacred journey for every Muslim that they must do once in their life. You have Muslims from around the world, traveling to Mecca in Saudi Arabia. So all of the trains, the buses, the entire infrastructure where they are getting around and doing this once in a lifetime pilgrimage, all of that's been built by China. So you could literally say that China is directly impacting the lives of tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of Muslims, as they're making this trip to Mecca and doing this, pilgrimage that every Muslim should be doing at least once in their life. So I think that's a really big thing. I mean, Alex, you've got a really good, you just had on the slide there. I believe this is the 5G port that's in Tianjin. So I was reading about our biggest port in the United States, which is in Long Beach, California. When COVID happened, we had significant delays because we couldn't get the personnel in there. It's extremely old, the infrastructure. We just cannot. It is the largest by size in the United States, but it's run incredibly inefficiently. And here you have these images from Tianjin in China. You have Huawei has built a 5G network there. You have everything is going on. It's incredible. They have, I believe, up to 75 autonomous vehicles that everything is running autonomously. Okay. I mean, so instead of having workers on the ground in the port, people are in a control room monitoring everything. Everything is run much more efficiently because these machines have artificial intelligence. They know exactly the timing. You can imagine having hundreds of cargo ships coming in. You have all of these vehicles that are moving around and transporting these cargo ports. So it's incredible just how advanced China is. Again, this is something that we're seeing. We can't really see that anywhere else in the world, is how artificial intelligence, how the 5G network. I mean, this is what's interesting is, you look at the Middle East specifically. Look at the United Arab Emirates, UAE, who, by the way, just joined the Belt and Road, or who just joined the BRICS alliance. They'll be joining as a full member in January 2024, along with Saudi Arabia, along with Iran. So these are some very big countries that obviously have a dominant share of the oil production, the crude oil production in the world, with the addition of, when you look at Russia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and now the United Arab Emirates, the BRICS alliance now controls 50% of crude oil production. That's massive. I mean, that's a huge control of that. But you look at the UAE, I've been there personally. I visited it back a few years ago. But they've been running on Huawei's 5G network for years now. And they have some of the fastest internet speeds. They have the whole infrastructure done. I was just reading today on Twitter, there's a new article that came out in Germany where the German government had actually gone forward and they have actually installed part of the Huawei equipment because, there's a huge concern of security in the West, but they've realized, it's hardware. We actually need to have this infrastructure built, and Huawei makes the best stuff. I mean, it's just as simple as that. Why are we going to handicap ourselves? And, the German government obviously said, look, we've tested it. We believe it's not a national and security risk. We're going to go ahead and move forward with this. So you're seeing some countries that are kind of breaking away from that the U.S. orders, right? I mean, we go back. This is so funny. Remember when Trump had basically said to the UK, you need to do this. You need to ban Huawei. I mean, the interesting thing is Huawei built the entire 4G network in the UK. So now the UK government, again, this was back in 2020, they said, okay, we have a 7-year plan to replace the Huawei equipment due to national security concerns. I mean, it's hilarious because it's like, oh, okay, so, it's a 7-year plan. It's going to take you 7 years to rip out all that Huawei equipment and then reinstall it with something else. Meanwhile, your customers and your citizens in the UK are going to suffer because they're going to be years behind getting the right infrastructure, getting this deal as far as getting advanced 5G network. I actually shared a tweet about that a few weeks ago where, again, it said, I think it was a few years ago, it said, I think it was 3 years ago. It said the UK is going to abandon Huawei, and now just last month they said, 5G expert, the UK is falling years behind in getting 5G, because they're ripping out the Huawei equipment.
I want to add to this 5G to let people really understand what it means. And I mean, it has a lot to do with really think about this for a moment. If people want to get surgery and they're in remote villages or they're in other countries and can't get accessibility to healthcare, the technology of 5G really has solved the problem. I've been to places here in Chongqing that have actually shown us remote operating, precision operating, not just from working ports from an office cubicle maybe 1,000 miles away, but this is stuff that is really changing lives here. Now people in the West might say, in the collective West, they might say, wow, okay, so big deal, the internet's a little bit faster in your phone, what's a big deal? It really is a big deal, because we're talking autonomous cars as well. I was just in one of the data parks here in Chongqing. Now, you might think 3,000 people that, go around the side, or maybe it was 30,000. Anyway, we'll find out that figure later. But it has many companies on it, and these companies are using this technology, and they're trying to innovate it to try to see, how can cars change? Well, what I learned from the EV market here, and I view this really as a stem to the BRI, is this is the collaboration of many companies here in China working together. The Huawei's, the BYDs, the NIOs, the Avatar 1.1s, all these companies working together, the mapping. Now, in other parts of the world, a competitor is a competitor. In China here, it's how can we all make this work? How can all these companies collaborate together? And some of them are actually Western companies as well, having no problem selling their product here. It's not just the other way around where, a lot of people think that it's just China dumping goods into North America. In fact, a lot of Western companies are actually in collaboration in some of these new energy vehicles here. The interesting part is they're trying to find ways to improve people's lives. For example, there's a organization here that monitors and helps support these cars. It's called Kieri. And this division really, it has a standard that helps people understand how automobiles work. It's kind of like I don't want to say it's a testing facility, but it's more of a research facility to help these automotive people to innovate these cars. Now, you might think, okay, new energy vehicle, it's a battery, it's a car, that's it. No, in fact, if you've ever driven in some of these vehicles here, which are quite affordable as well, there's many price points to enter that market, but this is actually changing lives. I got into this car. I was driving the Avatar 1.1 briefly up the highway towards the airport. It went into autonomous mode. Then the fireplace came on, and the LED fireplace, Cyrus, came on. And, I'm sitting there relaxing in this car. The music goes in, the massage chair goes on, the ambiance inside the car. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. This isn't bad. This is very good. And then you start to say, wait a minute, the average person spends 2 to 3 hours in a major city in North America, 2 to 3, maybe 4 hours a day in their car. Well, in fact, if a car can help you, also prevent you from getting into an accident, nothing's 100% yet, but prevent you from getting into an accident, lower that stress level of driving, give you more of an understanding. These cars could even see 50 to 100 meters into fog. That is how really technology has, greatly advanced here in China. Cyrus, what is the NEV market like in the United States?
Yeah, actually, I want to talk specifically about that EV market because, Alex, I was listening to an awesome audio clip yesterday. It was an interview actually with Forbes, and there was a gentleman by the name of Tu Le, T-U-L-E, Tu Le. He is the CEO. I believe he has a company called Sino Auto Insights, but he's basically the authority figure on kind of all things EV related. I believe in the United States and China. Very, very smart gentleman. And Tula had just gone to, I believe he was in an auto show in Shanghai, I believe it was recently. But he said, so anyways, Forbes sat him down and he had a couple of really big insights that I want to share. So first of all, the Forbes editor said, Tula, what is the one thing that you noticed when you went back to Shanghai? And he said, the biggest thing I noticed was, number one, was there were a lot of expat CEOs that were, that hadn't been to China in 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And as you know, Alex, so, I met in Shanghai a few months ago. I mean, it was my first time back to China in 4 years, obviously because of the COVID pandemic. But he said these auto executives and people within the EV industry, they had gone back to Shanghai. And he said, the first thing I noticed was just how surprised these executives were at how fast China is advancing in this field. And he said that it's no doubt about it that China is leading this industry. They are inventing truly amazing things. And, what we're seeing right now, I mean, to answer your specific question, what is the EV industry here in the United States? Well, it is definitely, dominated by Tesla. I mean, Tesla has a very large market share here. It is incredibly successful. Full disclosure, I also drive a Tesla here in the United States. I do it just because of the gas prices here are so ridiculously expensive. And it is extremely economic, to actually have an EV. I'm not one saying like, oh, I want to do my part for the environment. I mean, I do think there's a lot of, there's a counter argument to that. Is there really an environmental benefit? But obviously there's a financial benefit with going EV just in the sense of saving that money and also, having better access to parking spots. You can always get premium parking if you have an EV. So it is certainly gaining a lot of momentum, but I think that's what I want people to understand as well, Alex, is that, when we're talking about EVs, 50% of every Tesla is made in the Shanghai Gigafactory. So what the smartest thing that China ever did and this is really an incredible move, and I broke this down in a full video, is that China has actually welcomed in Tesla, and they have made Tesla the center of the Chinese EV ecosystem. And that's something that a lot of people don't understand, because we kind of get in this battle where like, oh, BYD's doing really well, Xpeng, NIO, who cares? Li Auto, all of these, Chinese companies are rising. Well, guess what? They can't, they're never going to compete with Tesla. Tesla's is the GOAT. Tesla's the best. And it's like, well, Tesla wouldn't be possible without China. That's why Elon Musk went to China. That's why the Shanghai Gigafactory exists. And the other thing that we have to really realize is that the other insight that Tula that shared is he said the big race right now is trying to get EV vehicles down to a very affordable price point in the United States, right? He wants to develop a premium, for example, I mean, if you're going to have a premium Tesla, I think it's the Model X. So it's around $100,000. I mean, it's not a cheap car at all. I have the Model Y, which is basically just your standard version. It's, much cheaper than that. It's just a, 4-door sedan, your basic entry-level model. I think maybe that's the 3 or the Y. Can't remember, but I've got the Y. It's much cheaper than that. But he's like, if you want to build a premium model in the United States, it still costs you $100,000. But one of our persons in the one of our people in the chat, they had said, look at the Ford factory. They are partnering with CATL, which is the leader in the battery technology. And even the New York Times wrote an article that was really fascinating and said that nobody can compete with China when it comes to battery technology. There's no one even close to it. So, I mean, this is what's funny. I mean, we have some trolls in the chat here that are like, oh, you guys are shilling. You guys are just, talking nonsense about China. To be honest, we look at China in a very fair way because we're just saying the truth. I mean, here you have the New York Times just coming out and I mean, they had an amazing intro. The very first paragraph to that said, whoever controls the battery industry controls the future of the world because this technology is so important. And right now, China has an insurmountable lead and no one's even close to them. No one's even close, Alex. So again, it's not my words. It's not your words. It's not like that's what the Chinese government wants us to promote. We're just, in fairness, this is what the New York Times is telling us, and this is what, when you look at, this is why I go to industry experts, somebody like Tula, who literally runs a company called Sino Auto Insights. He is the authority figure all things related to EV, whether that's US or China. And I'll come to the conclusion here. He said, what's happening in China is that you're able to get a premium EV for well under 50,000, US dollars. And the only way the United States is going to do that is if the American companies partner with Chinese battery manufacturers and partner with Chinese companies to get that price point down. In the United States, if we were going to build it in America only with American technology, impossible. It will not happen. So again, it goes back to what my core mission is on YouTube, and it's always promoting the United States and China working together. You know that. You know that that's my mission. You call me the peace ambassador, and that's something that I always want to strive for. But again, when we hear these messages of the United States should decouple from China, we want to move every factory out. No, there's actually going to be the opposite. We're actually going to see more Chinese companies coming here and opening factories in the United States just to take advantage of, the labor market here, the conditions here, and potentially, hopefully bringing more Chinese EVs into the United States. And I mean, what's interesting, Alex, is we're also going to see Xiaomi, which has made it makes an incredible smartphone. It's the highest quality to price ratio. It's not a very high price point, but it's a very high quality phone. They're going to be debuting their EV automobile next year in China. So again, this is much more advanced, and it's just ludicrous when people are critical of the Chinese EV industry. I know there's some very well-known anti-China YouTubers. We don't need to we don't need to mention their names on here to, bring down the quality of this stream, because, they're just living in denial and, just talking about how terrible, the China EV industry is. But again, let's go away from the anti-China YouTubers who have an incredible bias and are just so jaded to what's actually happening in China. Let's go to industry experts, someone like Atula, who can actually give us a more accurate insight into what's really happening in China. And again, go to New York Times, go to anybody that really understands the EV industry. The future's China, and it's not even close.
I'm going to add to that.
Please.
And I think there's a very big misunderstanding about what this EV market really is, this new energy vehicle market. I mean, people think in the United States, of course, Tesla is a very fine automobile. There's no doubt about that. But the misunderstanding here, Cyrus, is you have the people that feel these cars just don't have power, or, my car that I drive with petrol is the way forward and it will always be the forward. That misunderstanding of actually the mechanics behind these cars, how these cars operate, what their purpose is on the road. This isn't about, China just saying, okay, everybody, drop the petrol cars. Let's go to battery power cars. That's it. And, trust us. I've been in this city of Chongqing for 2 years. Now, this city is a prime example of where I think future cities are going. Chongqing, it can hold its weight in population. That's for sure. 30 million plus. So let's put this city up against major cities in North America. Let's put it up against New York. Let's put it up against London. Let's put it up in major cities, in other parts of the globe. Mexico City, for example. Okay, that's actually a good example. Let's go 1-to-1 with Mexico City and Chongqing here. Both are very, very populated cities, okay? Mexico, major pollution problem. Chongqing, on the road to the solution to the problem.
Yep.
Almost all new cars that I'm seeing on the roads here, especially whether they're in the delivery, whether they're in the Didi or the taxi companies like we call T3 here, they are mostly powered by new energy vehicles. Now, these companies are in collaboration with the taxi companies. Okay. Now, if you drove in these cars, if you've ever been a passenger in these cars and you're blindfolded and you're told, sit down, tell me, battery powered or gas powered, you couldn't tell the difference. To be honest, you cannot tell the difference. Now, there's going to be people in there saying, I won't go. I'm staying with, my car. I want to lay rubber. It's, this is what I want to do. I understand that point of hearing that car, maybe muscle cars, or I don't know what they call them, hot rods in my days. But this is about car companies that have to innovate. They have to. This is coming, North America. Whether you like it or not, this is coming to the shores near you. You cannot avoid what's happening here in China. 16.2 million of these units have gone out the door. That is nothing to what the potential. I just spent last week at the Smart China Expo, and I saw stuff that is on its ways to the shores there. Now, people might say, I can't really afford a Tesla. And then they sit in a BYD, Beyond Your Dreams vehicle, and they say, wait a minute, this price point is interesting. Or they're a small delivery company in the United States. Maybe a bakery or something. Well, there's Wuling automobiles. Some of these EV cars are as cheap as $4,000 or $5,000. Okay, some of them go up to $40,000 to $50,000. I mean, this market is massive. Is it going to slow down here? Absolutely not. Yeah. This country has set the infrastructure up for it. It's set the collaboration up for it. It's what's going on inside these cars. Trust me, guys, when you sit in these cars and you see what these cars can do, it's not just about driving, it's the experience. Imagine getting on a road, Cyrus. For example, you lived in British Columbia, a lot of rainy days down there, sometimes very hard to see in front of you. Imagine these cars telling you what's 50 or 100 meters in front of you through that rain, through radar cameras, through sensors that actually can save your family's lives in road accidents or things like that. This is about, changing the whole way we look at driving. It's not about driving you out of your, car, or it's not necessarily an environmental drive here. The other thing that I want to add to that is there is absolutely no incentive for these big three automobile companies in the United States to actually go through with this. Okay. And what I mean by that is, why would you convince General Motors, Ford, or any of these companies to come out of that? The oil companies are definitely not going to talk them out of it. Yeah. The petroleum companies that make gasoline and diesel fuel, they're not going to talk them out of it. In fact, they might start their own propaganda drive against these very vehicles by saying, wow, American muscle, you got to have that car. Nothing wrong with having that car. If you want to have that car, it's no problem. But for the average person that wants to improve their life, improve their pocketbook, and improve certain things, this is an alternative to them. No one's saying you got to go out and do this tomorrow morning. But I'm going to tell you, it's going to come to a price point. Laugh as they may, some of these people at what we're saying about this car market. Oh, it's just a fad, or it might not happen. I'm going to tell you right now, Cyrus, and I think you agree on some of these points. These cars are coming to the shores. They're looking for collaboration. They're welcoming companies like, Chevy and all these Fords and all these, even Mercedes. They're welcoming them to the table with their technology and say, let's collaborate. Let's get together. Let's have board meetings. Let's find a price point for somebody that wants to get into that vehicle. It is happening, whether you like it or not. It's going to continue to happen. And the major, major, major push for this new energy vehicle market is in play. And that's where we go all the way back. We do a full circle all the way back to the Belt Road. How are you going to get these vehicles to market? Well, with one of the greatest infrastructures ever put in place, connecting 152 countries from China. That is the BRI. And if you got to ship battery-powered vehicles, you're putting them on the rail tracks, and those rail tracks are going right into Europe. And that is a price point and a competitive price point there. I mean, you can see this. I can see it here. It's almost like, I met a lady that was at the Smart China Expo. She was in the Austrian pavilion. She said, basically, these cars are smartphone on wheels. Yeah, is the way she put it. Nice. And that is where I think we're going with this. We look at this market here and we just think, the average person might still fall into that. Well, China doesn't know how to make great products. Well, in fact, they do. If you're a drone operator, you like DJI products, made in China. Oh yeah. If you're watching this program right now on a laptop or a smartphone, most audibly made in China. Now you might say, well, it's an Apple product. Well, yeah, no, it's designed in California, made in China. So I'm gonna hand that over to you, Cyrus. And I don't think that North American market is really accepting what's about to happen. I think we are going to see a massive amount of these vehicles hit the streets in America. And, I'm not trying to convince people by saying to them, give up your gas powered car. But let's say you're a family of 4 and you have all 4, cars that are all petrol and they're using gas. Let's see the alternatives. And China's not just looking at automobiles here. They're looking at delivery trucks. They're looking at, half-ton trucks. They're looking at taxi companies. They're looking at, I drive an e-bike here. I don't know if you know that, Cyrus. I drive
I do.
an e-bike in Chongqing here. My e-bike is competitive to any road scooter. It can do 50 to 70 kilometers an hour. Okay. This bike costs me $2 a month to drive.
Yeah. That's quite amazing.
That is it. It's battery powered. It's got all the power.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, Alex, there's definitely been some prediction of that as well. I have read another article. I forgot the news source, but it had basically predicted that as well, is that the next step is for more of these Chinese auto manufacturers to, come into the United States and certainly even Europe and Western nations, simply because of the price point, and I mean, that's where we see that on a greater scale with other things as well. It's the same reason why, for example, why did Apple go to China in the first place? Why do they manufacture there, right? Obviously, they partner with Foxconn. Foxconn owns the factories in China. That's where your iPhones are produced. And it's because you have this incredible price to quality ratio that's really unmatched in China. And what's interesting is even though the Chinese manufacturing, the cost of that has risen significantly, right? Salaries are higher. You've got pensions and health insurance plans and things like that. I mean, it's significantly higher to produce in China, but you've got the quality that's there. And that's why there's still so many companies that are, manufacturing in China. When I was back in China in June, I went to a textile factory, I had the opportunity to see how, over 25 different Western brands are still choosing to manufacture their textiles in China because it's just that price to quality ratio. Sure, it's a higher end manufacturer. They're do a lot of work with European brands, European ski jackets or European golf shirts, and they need to have that high quality ratio. And so, yeah, I think, Alex, what we're looking at is, everything's tied together. The other thing that I mentioned in my breakdown on the EV industry is that when the Chinese government gets behind a plan, when they really get behind something, that is obviously, you get the green light from the Chinese government, that basically means that, China's going to do it. And we've seen that with other industries as well. For example, artificial intelligence. We know that the Chinese government said, look, there is a strategic shift. We are going to be prioritizing that. When that happens, all of a sudden, different regions, for example, could get tax advantages. Okay, if you're an AI company, you come to this city in this district, you're going to be able to save on your corporate taxes because we want to prioritize this AI industry. We want to hire more people in this industry. The interesting thing is that when you go back in time and you look at how China became an EV player, what happened is that they actually sent
risk from China. It's something that many of our Western politicians are saying.
Sorry about that.
And to answer that question, I've decided to.
Nice. There we go.
Sorry.
Nice little plug for my factory that I visited, Kalito. Shout out to Tommy and the team over at Kalito, for having me visit there. They're over in Jiangyin, near N.Y.C there. And so this was an awesome opportunity to go and visit. You can see that red shirt on the right is Swix. It's a European, I believe it's a Norwegian, or I know it's a Scandinavian brand, I believe. But
where's this showroom that we're looking at?
This showroom is actually in it's in a factory. It's called Kalito, and there's the owner. He's a co-owner. His name is Tommy. He's originally from Norway. He's been traveling between China for 16 years. But again, it's a beautiful showroom. And Tommy, his co-founder Andy, who's a Chinese national, they invited me. They sponsored my trip to China. They brought me out to China specifically to tell their story to the world and how it was awesome. It was a great video, really well received. If you haven't watched that, the title is "I Visited a Chinese Factory. What I Saw Shocked Me," because it truly was shocking, Alex. It was incredible to walk through the factory. See, the 200 plus workers in there, the conditions that they're working in. Tommy really brings a great insight into this because, he is Norwegian. He's based in Norway. He just travels between China and Norway. But what they do is they do things a little differently. You know, they pay their workers a little bit higher salary. The workers that are at that factory, they don't actually live on site. He said, no, we're going to pay you a higher salary so that you can go home and be with your families. Quite an interesting concept, right? Because he said, look, you know, we want you to enjoy your work here, but we want you to make sure that, you know, if you're a mom and dad, like we want you back home with your kids. Like that's where you should be. In addition to that, he did another thing that was quite amazing is he said, you know, quite typical for Chinese companies is that, you know, your year-end bonus, you actually get that after Chinese New Year, right? They want the, you know, when the employees, you know, they go away for 2-3 weeks for Chinese New Year, you know, as an incentive to get them back to the company, they hold out on their bonuses. And Tommy said, no, let's do the opposite. Let's give them their bonuses before they go on holiday because that's when they need it. You know, let's give them their bonus so that when they go back to their hometown for their 2-3 week holiday, you know, they can actually use that bonus and actually, you know, enjoy their holiday even more. And we're gonna create loyal employees that way. So I mean, he's brought in a great Western mindset mixed in with the Chinese mindset. You know, they're producing some of the top European clothing brands. I mean, price points where, you know, $150 a shirt, you know, they're making it in his factory because he has the most advanced machines. And that's something that's amazing is, you know, even what I noticed is I'm not an expert in the textile industry. So I went there to learn. And he said, look, in Jiangyin, this area, this is where a lot of the manufacturing and textile is. Well, within a 20-minute radius of our factory, we have the cotton factory, we have the button factory, we have the zipper factory, we have the dye factory. If you need to, you know, obviously it needs to be dyed all these different colors. All of this is within 20 minutes. In addition, all of the machines that we're using, right? The machines that he's using, it was a very advanced 6 needle thread machine. You know, it's not like your common stitching one that has one. It has 6 different threads going in to produce that high quality stitch. And I'm like, wow, where's this machine made? Oh, 20 minutes down the road. You know, if the machine breaks down within 20 minutes, we can have, you know, a technician here. It gets fixed within an hour and we're back up in production. You know, the laser cutting machines, all of this technology is made in China as well. And all of those factories are within that area as well. So it's quite interesting how they've built the whole logistical supply chain there because all of the raw materials, everything you need is within, you know, a 20-mile radius. And that's that advantage in China. That's that China speed that we're always used to talking about. And so it was a really great insight into how that textile industry works and why, you know, European companies are saying, hey, you know, sure, there's more manufacturing going around. Obviously, a lot of textile manufacturers have gone to Vietnam or Mexico, Bangladesh. I mean, you know, obviously there's, you know, but there's enough to go around. You know, there's still, you know, there's still a great quality. And I think with what Tommy has been able to do at that factory is because he's a Norwegian national, he's able to really sell that well because he's based in Norway. And he travels all throughout Europe and he meets with other clothing manufacturers and says, hey, I'm Tommy. I actually own a factory in China. So you're dealing with me, you know, a Norwegian, you know, person. So they have that trust factor. And it's like, look, you know, we're at all the international standards. And he said, even the Chinese government, he said, it's very difficult to, you know, pass the inspections that they have to go through, you know, to make sure that they meet these quality controls. It's much more complex than the average Westerner knows. And obviously, you know, everything is you know, he knows all the employees there, treats them well. I mean, it's really a great factory, you know, that because he says, look, these European brands, they need to make sure to know, hey, we're producing our clothing ethically, you know, in a great manner. The people that are working in these factories are treated with respect. They're given a high wage. They have a good career there. So again, it was really an eye-opening experience to me. And, you know, Alex, I hope to go back to China to visit these factories because I had so many fans saying, hey, go to the Tesla auto factory, go to the shoe factory, go to the electronic factory. You know, we want to see more of these factories in China. So maybe that's something you and I can partner on in the future. I'd love to get back to China, love to do these factory visits because it was an eye-opening experience for me as well. Obviously, I lived in China for 10 years, but I worked in a very different industry. I worked in the golf and hospitality industry. So we were focusing on more planning events around China as opposed to, you know, manufacturing products in China. So this was, you know, for someone that lived in China for 10 years, it was an eye-opening experience to, you know, to actually see a factory in the flesh and be there. It was awesome. I really hope to get back and see more factories and produce those kind of videos. A lot of people really enjoyed that.
my initial insight to China was, back in early 2000, 2001, when I came here and started importing and exporting from actually, manufacturers in Shenzhen. And then I began to realize that it wasn't just about price points. Like a lot of people would say, okay, maybe these are cheap. You've heard that cheap Chinese goods. I've heard it all the time, right? We hear it all the time. And in fact, the reason why these products would be, let's say, the quality would be compromised is, let's say, the end buyer would say, no, I don't want to pay, $5 for that glass. I want to pay $2 or $1 for that glass. Now, the manufacturer is going to say, well, yeah, we can produce it for $1, but the quality is not going to be superior to, let's say, the $3 glass.
Right.
And this is what happens. So you get the price points. And of course, then the buyer walks out and says, oh man, I got a great deal. He offered me $3 for a quality product, no problem, but I'm going to pay $1 for it. Well, yeah, you're going to pay $1, but the problem is that the speccing, the, all the things that go into engineering these types of products are going to be compromised. Now, that is possible here in China. The other thing that I think a lot of people don't understand is to open up a company here is pretty much encouraged and free. There's actually, I know within Chongqing, the administration charge to open up a company, to my understanding, it's almost zero. The government wants there to be not many barriers to help people or entrepreneurs that want to follow their dreams or follow their ambitions to open up a company. It's like a sport here. There's companies everywhere here. Some prosper, some don't. Some ideas they try, some don't. But it's not, all that money is not tied up in administration, hiring lawyers, hiring, expensive people to do company formations, auditors and stuff. Yes, of course, there's books and things that you have to audit. But tax here, Cyrus, is not a bad name. I mean, the tax code here for what employees get taxed at and companies get taxed at is very favorable if you want to run a company. And it's very straightforward, and most of it's online. I mean, I get sometimes quite a kick out of it when I'm walking by some of these tax offices. I mean, the latest tax office I saw was in one of the nightclub areas here in the city. It's like, hey man, might as well go visit the guys at the tax office here, and then go out for a beer and play some pool. I mean, it's a completely different dynamic here in China. When you're forming companies, when you're trying to bring something to the market, you have that support. And it's interesting how you showed your friend there and you toured around that company. I visited many companies in the last year, a motorcycle company, what else did we see? We saw a hot pot company, which is very popular here, that just make the sauce. We saw a pharmaceutical company. We saw how they treat the employees. I mean, some of these cafeterias were fully automated. Amazing cafeterias, and some of this workforce is massive. I know we were at one of the phone operators, Oppo. Oppo has a major manufacturing, a facility here in Chongqing, 10,000 employees. I mean, and I would ask, where do these employees live? Well, we have a possibility to house them. We have accommodations. Now, if you think about it, you're a university student or a person that maybe didn't go to university. You have the opportunity to get into a good company. Now, of course, everybody wants their kids to go to university, right? This is a country that actually allows kids to go and not become bankrupt as soon as they walk out of school with, a massive student loan debt of, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So the option for people here to, really decide their destiny is pretty clear. Now, if some people, academics is not a way forward, maybe a trade is a way forward. There's many opportunities, many cities that they can prosper in. But I'll give you an example. My experience when I was at the Oppo factory, or even a pulp and paper factory that we visited about an hour outside of the city here, I was very clear with the guy. I said, well, how do you recruit people, bring them in? Well, we train them on the spot. We train them how to do this. There's classes that can educate them on how to save money. They'll open up bank accounts. They will be able to save money, send it back to their family or whatever, so forward and forward. I mean, this is very interesting. We see in North America, a lot of these companies struggle to get employees because, well, housing is too expensive. How are you going to get an employee to work at I don't know, we'll use potentially what Amazon was trying to do in New York. How are you going to get somebody to go down and work for an Amazon at X amount of dollars an hour when you're living in New York, right? So this is the interesting thing about China, is that it has all types of levels, layers, and accessibility to people, whether you're a company owner, whether you're a factory owner, whether you're a foreigner in this country. It's quite welcoming. My wife recently opened up a company here in Chongqing about 6 months ago. The process was very, very straightforward.
Yeah.
And what I was quite surprised is a corporate bank account was open. Once the company was formed, a corporate bank account was open within 72 hours.
Nice.
Pretty amazing
Yeah.
stuff.
Alex, I when I was in Shenzhen, I had, interviewed a gentleman that, had basically was an American citizen that opened up his hedge fund. He had basically moved his hedge fund from Boston to Shenzhen. And it was a really great, it was called Snowball Capital. They had moved everything over, and certainly they had to jump through some hoops to do that. But I mean, he actually said it was actually pretty straightforward on the Chinese side. The harder side was actually on the American side, going through that paperwork and doing that. But he had moved his whole hedge fund to Shenzhen with this simple thing of saying, like, look, we are kind of investing in these emerging markets. We're investing in these industries like artificial intelligence and EV, and China's just simply too important to those industries to not spend significant time here. He said originally we thought, okay, we're going to spend maybe 3 months out of the year. Maybe we do something short term just so we can be on the ground. But he also said what's interesting is with these Chinese companies, there's not enough analysts that are really covering them. And the problem is that a lot of the analysts are based in Hong Kong. They don't have that intimate knowledge. And he said, you know what, how about this crazy idea? Instead of going to Shenzhen, for a couple months out of a year, why don't we just move the company and why don't we just HQ in Shenzhen? Let's be on the ground. And he said that's been very instrumental to him and his team, because now, as you know, Alex, I mean, now it's just like, hey, it changes the whole dynamic. Instead of, hey, we're based in Boston, we're coming in for a factory visit, can we come one day? Now it's like, hey, by the way, we've moved our company to Shenzhen. We're now living full-time in China. We're based in Shenzhen, and we want to come see the factory. Very different pitch there, and he's been able to have a lot of interesting insights into the EV industry, into the AI industry, into all of these industries that are emerging, and he has a lot more respect because you're going to garner that when you are on the ground in a Shenzhen and doing that. So it's really interesting. And I do want to see we got a lot of super chats popping in here. I do want to give a shout out to Trevor Norman, Peter there, John Lee, guys that have been in here. We've got a lot of great supporters in here, and Alex, I've passed over 1,600 people in my stream alone. I think combined we're well over 3,000. So I just want to thank everybody for taking time out of your day to spend it with us here on YouTube. And I want to play that Joe Biden clip right now.
Let's do that. Let's do a little bit of a shift here, guys, in the show here. We've action-packed the first part about the Belt and Road, BRI. As you guys know, 10-year anniversary, September the 7th. It's quite a dream, and it has now part of a reality in 152 countries worldwide and growing. We're going to shift now over to some geopolitical stuff here, and we're going to start with a clip. Cyrus, maybe you can set us up for this clip, and then once you tell me to go, I will go on it.
Yeah, I mean, this is again. I mean, I want to go. I want to go on and talk about specifically the United States. And again, this is, some people might say this might be too critical. Maybe this is poking fun at Joe Biden. But what I want people to understand is how the United States is being perceived on the international stage right now. I had a European friend send this to me and just simply ask me a question. It's like, how do you guys put up with this? Like, how are American citizens acceptable that this is your leader? I mean, in my opinion, and again, I'm an outsider, this is my European friend talking. He said, look, I would call for his immediate removal. But go ahead and play the clip of President Biden. Sure. This is President Biden, in Vietnam, talking about the infrastructure deal between the U.S. and Vietnam.
All right, here we go.
Let's see. I'm just following my orders here. Staff, is there anybody haven't spoken to? I ain't calling on you. I'm calling on, I said I have 5 questions. I don't, anyway, I just think that there are other things on leaders' minds, and they respond to what's needed at the time. And look, nobody likes having celebrated international meetings if you don't know what you want at the meeting, if you don't have a game plan. He may have a game plan. He just hasn't shared it with me. But I tell you what, I don't know about you, but I'm going to go to bed. Oh, third world. The Southern Hemisphere had access to change it, had access. It wasn't confrontational at all. He came up to me and said,
Thank you, everybody. This ends the press conference. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
You know, Alex, I'm just gonna comment on this because this is,
and the Oscar goes to.
I mean, what's really sad about this though is that this is how the United States is represented on the international stage. And again, I'm not taking a shot at Biden, but I genuinely feel sorry for him. I mean, he's approaching 81 years old. He is not in a capacity to run our country. It's as simple as that. He just is not mentally there. And it's an absolute embarrassment on the international stage when you're at this point. I mean, in fairness, he served his country for 40 years in the government. You know, Biden should be retired. He should be, you know, enjoying a peaceful life and enjoying his older years, not put in this position to quite frankly, have the most difficult job in the entire planet. So, but what's sad is that my Canadian friends, my European friends, my Australian friends, people are sending this to me. And it's like, Cyrus, like, we used to think so highly of the United States. You guys are a joke right now. Like this, and you know, it's like, how do you guys put up with this? And it's like, well, it's not like we have much choice. You know, it's not like, you know, I don't think anybody really voted for Joe Biden thinking that Joe Biden is the guy that needs to be in charge of our country. People voted for Joe Biden because they didn't like Donald Trump. That's the only reason that Joe Biden got votes. No one thought that he is capable of leading the country or the right choice. You know, Joe Biden, but you can see there, I mean, it's a disaster. He has no idea what he's talking about. I mean, you look at, you know, we need a strong leader inside the United States. 2024 election is going to be very interesting. I mean, we're already hearing reports that most likely Kamala Harris is going to go ahead and replace him. I mean, I don't know if he's even going to make it. I mean, there's no way he could go into a presidential debate. I mean, he'll get smoked by anybody on the Republican side, just simply because he can't stand there. He can't stand there and debate for an hour. It's just impossible for him to do. And I think that's where, you know, and again, what's interesting though, Alex, did this as well, is, you know, we see this constant double speak from Biden. On one side, he'll say, you know, even at this press conference in Vietnam, you played the clip earlier, you know, when we did the intro of the show, you know, we don't want to contain China, you know, we want to work with China, you know, and then the next day it's like, you know, not under my watch. China's not going to rise under my watch. So you kind of see like the Chinese government is always looking at this. It's like, man, you guys keep saying one thing and then the opposite and then another thing and then the opposite and then another thing. It's just this constant cycle. And so, you know, this is a big reason why the U.S.-China relationship is strained, because Chinese officials have no interest in what the United States says, because there's no continuity, right? Everything's just changes by the day. It's so fluid. No one knows what the heck's going on. I mean, I think like 6 times in his during his first term has Biden gone out and said something that contradicts the one China policy. And then, you know, all of a sudden, you know, his staff, oh, no, it's actually not what President Biden meant. The United States government, we adhere to the one China policy. Oh, but by the way, we're going to defend Taiwan. Wait, I believe in Taiwan. This, that. You know, it's just like, what is our position? You know, like, we need to have something just concrete and stick to it. You know, where we just kind of keep trying to play both cards. And it's like, oh, no, we don't want to contain China. We want, you know, a rising China is beneficial to the U.S., but then, you know, 2 days later, it's going to be like, well, we're going to go ahead and restrict. I mean, look at the new Huawei phone. I mean, it's so funny. You have SMIC, you know, who is a Chinese company selling parts to another Chinese company. It's like, you guys have violated U.S. sanctions. You know, what planet are you guys thinking on? By the way, I've got a full breakdown of that Huawei phone and how that is completely revolutionized. I mean, this is actually a game changer. This has completely changed the future of U.S.-China relations and also world geopolitics. I'm going to break that down in a new video, hopefully coming out in the next couple of days. But what's interesting is I mean, this is, as an American citizen, I mean, I love my country. I love, I live in the United States. It's where I was born. It's where my parents and my family are. But I mean, there are so many problems inside this country. And, we're not addressing the issues. We have incredibly poor leadership inside this country, and we have incredibly corrupt politicians. I mean, you look at some of like Mitch McConnell, Joe Biden,
Lindsey Graham.
I mean, a lot of these people. I mean, in fairness, like why are the people that are making the most important decisions in our country, why they should all be in a nursing home? And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I'm just speaking rationally here. Let's just speak the truth. And I would say the same thing if you got, another world leader that's in this type of capacity, they just simply can't be there. I'm absolutely for term limits. I'm absolutely for, age restrictions. You just cannot be. How could you, I'll just give you a reference. My mom is close to 80 years old. We would not trust her with the care of our 3 children, as far as like, hey, mom, can you watch over them for the next 3 hours? My wife and I'd like to go on a date. We don't do that because she's just not in that capacity. Physically, she can't keep up with them. It's not a safe environment for the children or my mom. We can't do that. And I had the same thing with my mom. She told me, she's like, hey, I really want to take your daughter out. I want to get her nails done. Can I drive her to the car? And I said, Mom, you can't. It's too dangerous. And she got really upset with me. She's like, why are you restricting me? I'm like, Mom, you're 80 years old. You have a hard time walking. You want to take my 7-year-old daughter out with you? What if somebody comes over and grabs her? There's nothing you can do. You're in a very vulnerable position here. And she's like, wow, I never thought about that, Cyrus. You're right. I said, the safety of the children is the most important thing. I just said, look, that's the reality of the situation, Mom. Like, no disrespect to you, but as her father, I've got to make the most important decisions. And it's the same thing. We cannot have this type of leadership in the United States. On the international stage, it makes us look incredibly weak. And it's something that needs to change. But again, it's like you come up here with Biden and it's like, well, we're partnering with the G20. We're going to take down China. We're going to build better roads for the Middle East. We're going to do something that's amazing in the Middle East. It's like, yeah, let's actually do something. But on the flip side, we're sending billions over to Ukraine. American people are struggling. The inflation is absolutely through the roof in this country. You talk about affordable housing. I mean, I saw another, somebody had posted, it's like, look at this chart. Beijing and Shanghai are completely unaffordable. This chart is absolutely shocking to the youth of China. They got to be so frustrated. I'm like, name me an affordable major city in the world. I mean, I was just in Vancouver, Canada last week, Alex. It's a disaster as far as housing and what the Canadian youth are feeling. You go on TikTok right now, you have hundreds of videos of young Canadians just like, I'm living in Vancouver. I have a degree. I have a master's degree to do this advanced education job. I make 40,000 Canadian a year. It's unlivable. I can't pay my rent. I can't live in this country. It's like, how are Canadians living here? Like it's a massive problem. Canada, US, I mean, all, Europe. I mean, try living in a major city in Europe, buying a 800,000 euro house or something with interest rates at 7-8%. Yeah, good luck with that. I mean, no chance.
We spoke about strong people here. One of them is a guy that both you and I know that you just recently interviewed, Patrick Lancaster. For the audience that doesn't know who Patrick Lancaster is a crowdfunded journalist who has been following the conflict in the Ukraine since, I believe, 2014, where most of the Western media will tell you that this conflict started just last year. Here's a figure for you, Cyrus, and I'm going to ask you this, and it's a little bit of a contest, okay? Let's ask the general chat box, everybody there in the comments, and yourself, how much money do you think the world or America has spent on this conflict in the Ukraine? How much money do you think they've spent in the last year? Ballpark it.
Oh, geez. Billions. I mean, I actually don't know that number, but I know it's got to be north of $20 billion.
So the first deal that was passed through the House and verified was $118 billion. That was in 2022. And then there's been various packages, military aid, arms, packages to keep the government afloat in the Ukraine, to make the pension plans continue on. The number is staggering. I would earmark it around $250 billion. Let's see what some of the people are saying in the chat. What is everyone in the chat? Somebody says 100 billion. Someone says 800 billion, 150 billion. Okay. In calculations here, I sat down last night and decided, let's guess and let's spend $250 billion on this crazy conflict that's been going on. If you add it up, Cyrus, it's in a yearly calendar, let's say it's including, so Jimmy's saying 260 billion here as well. Okay. That equals approximately 28 million US dollars per hour.
Yeah, it's just it's incredible. I mean, it's incredible.
So we were talking about Patrick Lancaster here. I will give you an idea of what kind of work Patrick does. Let's have just a quick little screen share of Patrick here on the front line in the Donbass area. Yes, go ahead.
Alex, I actually need to run. It's the school day this morning. I got to get the kids ready for school and get them going. So I just want to, I'll leave the channel going. I'll let you bring it home. I've got to get my kids are calling. We got to get it going. But anyways, guys, thanks. I think we had a great chat, Alex. Again, it's about, the Belt and Road Initiative, the G20, the title of the stream is, can the U.S. stop the China's Belt and Road Initiative? I'll just leave my closing comments here. I always worry about the United States that we're stretched way too thin. You're talking about that number, $28 million a day that we're sending over to Ukraine. And I mean, my opinion on Ukraine is that I want to find a solution to that war as fast as possible. I'm going to be continuing to bring in more experts on that. It's not my area of expertise. I focus more on China. But I mean, as an American citizen that's seeing my tax dollars going over there, I want a conclusion to this as fast as possible. And for both you Russians and Ukrainians to stop killing each other and the war to stop. But, Alex, I'll let you bring it home. Thank you again. I look forward to more live streams with you. We need to do this more regularly. We had many people in the chat. I mean, just awesome support from everybody. If you haven't watched, watch our latest videos out, and we got some more fun stuff coming out. My next video is going to be about Huawei and that phone and how that China has developed that 7-nanometer chip that, again, I believe has changed the entire future of U.S.-China relations. We're going to break that full video down. So, guys, Alex, I'll keep the channel going on my end, but go ahead and bring it home, and thanks for everything.
Thanks, Cyrus. Take care.
All right.
Okay, so just to bring you guys up to date here, Patrick Lancaster continually reports from the Donbass area here. We can see some of his amazing work here.
Several incoming shells are coming right now.
Let you guys listen to this for a moment.
Да, и не вставать. Выхода. Что произошло сейчас?
Произошло обстрел минометный с Васильков.
Нет, это САУ.
Васильки.
Не. Работает САУ.
Да? Что?
Работает 152-й минометный.
So that just gives you an idea of Patrick Lancaster, what he's been doing in the reporting in that area almost a decade. Now, I sat down with Patrick before the show. If you're coming and watching from Cyrus Janssen's channel, you will know exactly what video I'm talking about on Cyrus's channel yesterday or 2 days ago. It has over 300,000 views, where he interviewed a very good friend of mine, Patrick, who I've met in person and also really supported in the early stages of his channel. This is a man that risks his life every day to tell you, the viewers, the other side of the story. I decided to sit down with him before the show here and have an interview. And let's listen to see what Patrick has to say about the current situation here. And we'll talk to you guys in a bit. So, Patrick, thank you for coming back on to this program with me today. We're playing this segment during the live stream here with Cyrus and I. We are just a few hours away from our live stream, but I thought I would bring you onto this program. Your video went absolutely viral yesterday with Cyrus Janssen, clocking in at over 300,000 views within the first 24 hours that it's been published just on YouTube alone. This is an indication here that people really are now starting to pay attention and getting down to the truth of really what is going on in that area. I know that Cyrus had you on last year on his program, and this year, I don't think even he expected this type of response. Patrick, maybe you can share a little bit more insight on, what is going on down in that region right now. Are we going to continue to see this zone, going into 2024, maybe 2025? Give it to us here over the next couple of minutes so that our audience can really take in on what is really going on down there in the Donbass area. And for everyone that's just joining this program, Patrick is a crowd-funded journalist who has been documenting everything that's been going on in the Donbass area since 2014, not since the 2022, when the Western media has said that this conflict started. Patrick is his own YouTube channel called Patrick Lancaster that has amassed almost 600,000 followers. There's a reason why he's one of the fastest growing channels here in geopolitics. It's because people want to get to the truth. And that's exactly what we're going to deliver here today. Patrick, tell us really in a nutshell here for this program and for these viewers, what on earth is going on down there? Tell us the truth, please.
All right. Well, first of all, Alex, thanks for having me on again as normal. And Cyrus, it was great to be on with you the other day. I'm glad the interview went well. And Alex, hello to your viewers. I hope they're all subscribed. And I guess as far as the situation here, well, we could just kind of go what's happening now, what's been happening. But right now I'm in the center of Donetsk. And in this last week has been the first Russian election where the people of Donetsk and also Lugansk and Zaporozhye and Kherson. But I was here in Donetsk, so I can tell you what I saw with my own eyes. This is the first time these people here have been able to take part in the Russian government as Russians. And the Western mainstream media will have you believe that this area is full of Ukrainians and is part of Ukraine. And that's what I told the people that I was interviewing at the polls. And they laughed at me. And they laughed at the United States and Europe for saying that Donetsk is part of Ukraine. They said it's definitely not. They said it is part of Russia because the people want it part of Russia, and it's always been part of Russia. These are not my words. These are the people's words. But even though the people were so happy to be taking part in these elections, Ukraine was not. So Ukraine was hammering the city of Donetsk with Western supplied weapons, mainly 155 millimeter artillery shells on civilian areas. Now, the elections took place in kind of two parts. The first part was 8 days of mobile elections, where these mobile voting stations would go to different parts of the city and the territory and let people vote, as particularly elderly and things like that, and people that just couldn't make it to the polls. And then the last 3 days, which started last Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, were the open polling stations. And this is where I went and started filming what the people wanted, what the people felt about the day. So I was there on Friday documenting how these people felt. In the overwhelming feeling and opinion of these people was just happiness that they were able to take part in the Russian government, the Russian country. And unfortunately, Ukraine was hammering these civilian areas. And literally, the last week, people have been dying every day here. I myself on Sunday was at 6 or 7 locations that had been hammered by Ukrainian shelling, some artillery and some rockets. During the day, I was filming where artillery shells were coming down and interviewed one woman whose father was severely injured during an attack on their home. Luckily, her 2 young children were inside and weren't injured. Now, this is all on my reports. This is all documented. Anything I say isn't my opinions. It's what people tell me, the facts that they see and what their opinions are. And all this is documented on my YouTube channel, Patrick Lancaster. So this woman says her father was injured by the shelling. The daughter says that it was Ukrainian shelling. And I said, okay, why is this Ukrainian shelling hitting your civilian home? And she said she doesn't know. I said, maybe there's a military target near her. She said, of course not. It's only a civilian area. This is the common thing. Then I went to another home that the man told me a incendiary device came down on his roof and burned his home down. And he said it was Ukraine doing this. And his mother as well, an elderly woman, said it was Ukraine doing this and that it was only a civilian area and that they see Ukrainian drones above and that Ukraine knows it's only a civilian area but still fires on them. Their neighbor showed me a piece of what he said was a United States cluster bomb that had come down on their house just a couple days before. So this is just what's happening now, not what's happening for the last 9 years. But the fact is, United States weapons are hammering civilian areas, not only United States, but just general Western supplied weapons. The Western tax dollars are going to hit civilian areas. That's what Ukraine's doing with this. Of course, maybe they're also hitting military targets somewhere. I don't know, but I'm telling you what I see with my own eyes, and that's Western supplied taxpayers paying for weapons that are being used on civilian areas. So how long is this going to last? I don't know. But one thing that can be said for sure, Russian law, regardless of what the United States, Europe, or Ukrainian law says, Russian law says that these 4 areas, Donetsk, Lugansk, Zaporozhye, and Kherson, are Russian territory, part of Russia. That is Russian law, regardless of opinions of other countries. So there's no way by Russian law that Russia can stop this until Russia controls the entirety of those 4 areas. So unfortunately, it seems that this war is going to last another year or two. Who knows? I hope it ends tonight. Not tomorrow, but tonight. But it doesn't seem very likely. So I'm just doing what I can here on the ground to show the facts, and I'm glad to be here with you guys to show your audience.
Patrick, here's a figure that I want you to remember. We did some calculations yesterday, and we calculated 1 year and approximately got some general numbers, because you know that a lot of these governments will not really release how much money in funding they've done, how much money they've funded in other things. For example, how many arms they brought into the country. But let's use the cool, easy figure of $250 billion divided by how many hours there is in a year. You come up with a calculation of approximately the U.S. and the collective West. Many of these countries are burning $28 million per hour on this war. That is a staggering amount of money, absolutely mind-blowing to the audience. And I really appreciate that point that you made here tonight. You and I have an extended interview, which will be on my Reporterfy Media channel. And I also tell this audience that you're watching tonight to also watch Patrick Lancaster's channel, of course, and that amazing interview with Cyrus Janssen that just took place. If you want to get the background, caught up, and forward, that's how you got to go. You got to go with the Cyrus Janssen, Reporterfy Media, and Patrick Lancaster. And of course, we commend you for your hard work and your resilience to continue to reporting from this area. Patrick, what a great pleasure it's been to spend time with you today on the screen. Please be safe, my friend. And for everyone watching, go over to Patrick's channel right now. Donate, support this guy. He really appreciates it. And he's putting his neck and his life on the line to get you the truth. Patrick, thanks again for joining me. Greatly appreciated. Well, that's the latest update from Patrick Lancaster in the Donbass area. Like I said, don't forget to subscribe to his channel, Cyrus Janssen's channel, who was a major part of this live stream today. Pretty exciting to share the screen with these gentlemen. I want to thank you, the audience, once again. Don't forget to subscribe to all these channels. They are all in the links below. If you're coming over from Cyrus Janssen's channel to my channel, Reporterfy Media, welcome, say hello, and everyone will give you a warm welcome as well. Anyway, from me here in the fantastic, and I think undisputably one of the greatest cities in the world, here in Chongqing, China, it's a good night from me. You guys take care. We'll talk soon. And hey, we won't just let you go like that. Enjoy the views of China.